Hey everybody, welcome to Workforce Gaming. I'm Brad, here with Doug.
Hey.
Mafia Definitive Edition is a remake, more remaster, of an early 2000s open world game, kind of looking at the life of a guy rising up the ranks in the Mafia. It's a game that I played way early in the 2000s.
Oh, you
PC,
did? I didn't know that.
Things. Yeah,
That's cool.
I played Mafia 1 and 2. It's one of those games that in my mind has always kind of stuck with me as like, that game was really, really cool. And I honestly haven't touched it in probably 20 years. But it's just one of those, those games you have from like, when you're like 8 to 14 that you're like, I don't even know if I understood what that game was. But in my mind, I don't remember if I beat it. I don't remember how much I played it, but I liked it.
And then when you go, and then when you replay it, you're rolling a dice of like, God, I hope this game holds up because I just clearly didn't. Yeah.
Does this ruin a game that I feel like is one of my favorite games of all time? Or does this confirm this is a game that I really, really liked?
Yeah.
Definitive Edition confirmed that this is a very, very, very good game. The basic premise, I think it falls in line with a lot of like early Grand Theft Auto, PlayStation 2 Grand Theft Auto, where you're just guy on the street. In this case, you're a cabbie in the 1920s. And one night there's this shootout and a couple mafia guys get in your car and tell you to drive. And that's the opening scene of the game, which is very cool. Mm-hmm. Because it feels like one of those random events where it just starts out. Well, there's an earlier cutscene that you get a little bit of background, but basically the first gameplay aspect is literally just you standing outside your cab and they go, "Get in, cabbie!" And you just gotta start. They're like, "Lose them!" And you're like, "What is happening right now?" So it kind of just it gives you that tossed into the mafia feel right away, and it just kind of goes from there of how the main character Tommy makes his way from this driver driving people around collecting money all the way up to like the top guy in this family. It's Tommy's story. It's very cool because it's purely focused on Tommy, how he views things, how he sees things, how he goes through all these things. It's hyper focused on him, which I think is why I can get into this. I think a lot of open world games where you're this character, it's like, okay, we're going to talk about how big this city is, how big this town is, how big all the events are that are in this. And this is just like, here's what Tommy's doing. Here's why Tommy's doing this. Here's what Tommy thinks about this.
Is it so focused on him though that it's like, I mean, you still have like a cast of side characters.
Side characters are
okay. Great. Oh, okay. I wasn't sure if like it was like only Tommy's good.
No, side characters are like, if you've seen any mafia movie, it is every generic mafia stereotype that you see in every one of those movies. The great but mean, horrible Don, the goofy, like, "Hey, what's up, my mate?" Like that guy's there, the funky mechanic. It is all of your mafia stereotypes there. But just the story is so cool because basically, again, there is like a quick intro with that where I think it's like end of the 1930s. Tommy sits down with like an FBI agent. Is like, "I need your help. You got to get me out." And he's like, "Well, fuck you. I'm not getting you out. What are you coming to me right now for? What do you have?" And he's like, "I got it all." And then it progresses through. Okay, here's how I started. Here's how this happened. Here's how this happened. Here's why these cops died. Here's why this bank got robbed. Here's why this... And it's like Tommy like laying out his involvement in all this and pinning all of these other characters that as you're playing through these time periods, he's helping, and now you're seeing him kind of go back on him.
But do you know the conclusion of each story arc because of that? He's like, this is why that bank got robbed. And then you're like, well, I know I'm going to go rob a bank. Does that kind of like undercut the story, or does it make it more interesting, or is it kind of neither here nor there?
It's neither here nor there because a lot of it is like, well, let me tell you about what happened in 36.
Oh, okay.
And then you jump into 1936. And a lot of it's like, oh man, when the other family started acting up, we had to get them. And it's like, okay, now we're going to get into the story of how these gangs or these families kind of came together. So it alludes to what's going to happen, but it never really gives you that hint. All you know is that ultimately at the end, Tommy is at this point where he's like, I'm out, I'm done, I'm out, I need out, I need out, I need out. And there's some desperation there. There's some talk of like, okay, I got to get my family out, all this kind of stuff. So you know that ultimately it ends badly for Tommy.
Sure.
But it's his rise up there. It's such a good, unique story that it is so focused on him and his involvement in all this. You see very little of what the other family is doing, kind of your rival family. You see very little of what these characters are doing outside of Tommy. And it's just, it's so cool. I love that aspect of it. I played this as a linear narrative game. My absolute favorite edition in the Definitive Edition is the skip drive button. Because one of the things I very vividly remember of this is there is so much go drive to the place. Because you're a driver. So obviously there are go drive to the place things. So any non-plot related drive, you just hit the button and you're there. And there are some missions that it's like, this mission would have probably taken me 40 minutes. It took me 15 because it's like, all right, we got to go drive to the cleaners, get our money. Skip drive. We talked to the cleaners. We got back in the car. We talked in the car for 15 seconds. Skip drive. All right, we got to get our money from the butcher. And it's just, it speeds things up. It's so good. It's so nice.
I mean, I guess the question is, because the thing I think about like the Mafia series, because I have played two, I really love to. I play a little bit of this one, is kind of soaking in that atmosphere. Are you're not in for a soak. You're in for like a quick dip of atmosphere before you're on to the next mission, or because I always thought those things that was kind of neat about those games was just like traveling through the city, and it's just like, wow, this is just a neat sort of lived in sort of thing. I know at least on the first few, I always feel like the first few drives of any open world game are like magical, and then for some reason just drops off a cliff for some reason. Do you at least go through the magical drive? You're like, skip the magical drive.
So again, anything plot related is required. And early on in the game, a lot of the driving is plot related because it's going to find this place. Yeah. So there are a couple drives that are very much required and you can't skip. And again, because you do so much driving just in the missions themselves, you still get that.
That's fair.
I'll also say that, again, remaster, not remake, 2002, 2003 City does not quite feel that lived in as a modern city, because it does have that kind of just driving through empty streets feeling, like, where's all the people? And there's people there and there's stuff there, and of course all that stuff is there. And the city is very cool. I think one of the things that I also like about this is how many games do we have set in the 1930s? Like, that's not a time period that people examine in video games. So I do think that a lot of that is there and you get that feeling still, but it's not because I'm wasting my time going, all right, we got to go get to this place, get to driving.
Yeah, that's fair. I think it's kind of a disappointment because the little bit I play the game like looks insane. Like,
it does.
But is it like, it looks like an insanely good looking empty city? Is that kind of like sort of what your impression was of the city?
Yeah, I mean, it's not, again, not empty is very, very mean spirited here. But
false. How about false? Does that make sense?
Yes, false is a better word. It feels that way just after you play something like a Horizon, after you play something, like any of these modern games, and you're playing those and you're going, oh, okay, where's everybody at?
Yeah.
But again, 2002, 2003, whenever it was, you get that feeling.
But that's gotta be weird though, playing like a 2002 game with like 2019, 20 graphics though.
This is where kind of my ultimate thoughts on this game start to kind of like hit a railroad here, because everything up to here, it's like, this game is like everything I loved.
Yeah. Because
they put such a good coat of paint on this.
Yeah.
It makes everything else feel so bad. Because they're very clearly like, they didn't touch the gameplay. I will tell you, about halfway through this, I was so frustrated at some of the gunplay sequences that I just cranked that auto aim up, and I was just like, I'm gonna pop out of cover and just almost get insta headshots here, because it's just it's 2002. I mean, it's slow cursors, it's everything. Like, you had to be very there are some animations that just look so weird for such like the animation, like, so the character, the model is up here, but the animation just did not get that full treatment. So there's a couple
weird,
specifically climbing ones, where it's like your character looks really good and he's walking and he's running, and then all of a sudden you get to this thing and there's this really janky climbing animation, and it just kind of like, oh, what is that? The melee combat is borderline unplayable in a couple situations where you have like 4 or 5 guys trying to like just because, again, at the time it was probably like, oh, okay, yeah, it's kind of tough, but it's melee combat. What are you going to do? We can't do good melee combat. It's the early 2000s. This doesn't exist. And now you're just like, oh, but make this Arkham combat and we're golden.
So I mean, like, so what's driving you? It was funny because you would text me like, I really love this game, but it sucks. So like, what's pulling you? Like, what's pulling you through the game then? Like, what's the hook?
The story is good. Again, I liked seeing all that. It is such just a unique thing for this game, for a game to be set in this time period. Again, there was always just that kind of that hook in the back of my mind of like, I love this game. Like, I want to play this again. I want to keep going through this. So it's just kind of this feeling that like, oh, something good's going to happen. Like, I know that I like this. The story's there. There's enough other pieces that kind of pull you there. The other thing I'll say is like the first I think I made it through skipping all those drives and everything. I think I made it through this in like 10 hours. The first like 3 or 4 combat is very sparse, which I think really helps you get like kind of into it.
Yeah,
you're so engrossed in the story, you're so excited seeing what's happening, that by the time that you get to the point where combat's like oof, because it feels okay in those early levels where it's like, oh yeah, there's just like two guys here that I have to deal with, got it. By the time you get to the end and there's some scenes where there's 20 guys and you're like, oh god, this is obnoxious, it doesn't feel as good. But those first 4 hours, it's a lot of like driving. It's a lot of like, I go talk to this dude, get our money. Like it's a lot of okay, we got to go. There's a scene where somebody's getting beat up, and that's kind of how you get into the gang a little bit further, or the family a little bit further, is you help protect some people. And those little tiny scenes feel okay. It's just the big set pieces that you're just like, oh, I'll bet this would have been
that's
cool.
A bummer. Does it play through? Because I imagine if the story's good, like those set pieces contextually feel cool, but they're just not fun to play through.
Yeah. Oh, and when they get to the cutscene part of it, it's very cool. I mean, there's again, like there's some very unique missions too. Like there's one where you have to rig a race car to so that your family gets the money from this track. So you literally sneak in, steal the race car, have to drive it like in 6 minutes to this other place. You get there, you get out of the car, and then the dude just like goes to town on it, and you have to drive this like janky ass race car back in the still time limit without going too fast or it overheats, because you've basically set it up to like just die the second you smash the guy. Very cool things in this game. There's so many cool things in this game that keep you going. It's just that you have to have that tolerance for 20 years ago third person action, which if you didn't play 20 years third person action, it's gonna sting.
Okay. Yeah.
But I mean, really, I think if you take this away with the open world too, I think that the open world starts to get a little bit where you're like, oh, it's an open world. Again, early 2000s open world, it's like, yeah, you can drive around everywhere, but there's just not much to do.
Sure.
Like I did no side missions.
But you don't like. I mean, I know you. Don't
I don't do them anyway unless it's a game I'm really involved in. But they very rarely even pop up. There's very little talk of them. It's pretty much a just go. And I think that's one of the things that that Grand Theft Auto comparison kind of gets away from a little bit. Is Grand Theft Auto has a lot to do. This does not. It's an open world almost in name only.
Yeah, I remember Mafia 2, I felt like a hub. It felt like a hub for missions rather than like a place to actually explore, if that makes sense.
It feels more so, I think, even than that, where it's just, well, there's a city and you can drive anywhere, but that really doesn't mean anything for you.
Is that a negative for you, though, or no?
I wasn't even going to drive through the city anyway, so that's fine. I hit that skip drive button. I wasn't going to explore, and I wasn't looking for jumps and speed traps and side missions and all that stuff. But yeah.
So, what's your final takeaway then from Mafia?
I really want more games set in weird time periods. Ultimately, I think that's what draws you in here, is that it's a weird time period. It's a character-driven story in that time period, and it really involves you in that setting more than it does anything else.
All right. We are Workforce Gaming. You can follow us on Twitter at Workforce Gaming and subscribe to us wherever you're listening.